The BeeGee's, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? I actually had a great idea for this review where I'd have the band's music playing in the background while I gave my thoughts on the film, but then I realized YouTube would probably bar that video for having copyright material. I do encourage you all to play some of the music in the background yourselves though. I think we can agree it's amazing. A bit about my history as a BeeGee's fan. During American Idol's early years, there were a couple of seasons where I was hooked, and a couple of other seasons that I watched parts of. But out of all the celebrity guest judges I ever saw, only one made me want to hear more of his music. That was Robin Gibb, who appeared on the show in the early part 2003. So I was at Berkeley at the time. I went to the nearby record store. Yeah, it was a place catering to hardcore audiophiles. In fact, I believe it was a branch of Amoeba Music, in any case very similar, and got a BeeGee's vinyl album. I saw just how amazing their early work was. Like most people, I only knew them as the guys who sang Staying Alive. Well, but their work spanned many genres. They're by no stretch of the imagination just a disco group. And that summer, I bought a 2-disc CD set, the best of the BeeGee's, and oh my God, I was in heaven. Every day while driving to my internship that summer, I was listening to their music. I was getting myself cultured like that while others my age were listening to "It's Getting Hot in Here, so take off all your clothes." I would say Nelly's actual song is better than my rendition, but I don't want to lie. Anyway, you can see why I was incredibly interested as soon as I found out HBO Max had a new documentary all about the BeeGee's. And it's a really amazing look at their career and, to some extent, their lives. You know, any band that's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is going to have an interesting enough story that you can make a good documentary out of them. But this film went above and beyond what a documentary is supposed to do. I mean, you expect all sorts of archival footage, old photos, talking head moments with people connected to what's involved and so on. But this movie was so vast in the work it put together to that end. I just couldn't believe the breadth of the footage, especially. Wow. A must for any BeeGee's fan. If you're not a BeeGee's fan per se, still as a music fan, I think you'd love this. And it talks about the band's roots as an Isle of Man born, Australian raised group of brothers who, after somewhat obscure beginnings, got to come to America as part of the British invasion. And while they're not held in the same regard as the other B groups of the 60s, the Beatles, of course, and America's B-boys, the Beach Boys, I see the Beatles are at most just a notch below them in terms of their musical excellence. So they had all these soulful songs, often about love, early in their career, but they had two gifted musicians in Barry and Robin, and the third member, Robin's twin Morris, couldn't keep the peace between his twin and their big brother anymore, so the group briefly split up and then reunited to no fanfare. Struggle for a few years, seemed like maybe they were a flash in the pans. Their earlier success in the late 60s had made them, but then they were asked to do some songs for a soundtrack, and honestly, until I began reading about this movie. I didn't know the Staying Alive soundtrack was the most successful album of all time until Michael Jackson's Thriller came out 5 years later. Wow, suddenly they were everywhere. I got absolute household names, fabulously wealthy. But, again, some sociology in the movie. Disco had its roots in the gay scene and the black scene, and middle America's racist, homophobic attitudes makes that once disco got overexposed, everyone was quick to turn on it. They apparently even had, the White Sox did, a disco burning night at Comiskey Park, which apparently just turned into a music by black people burning night. So BeeGee's, as the face of the disco fad, were suddenly persona non grata. But then, using their you can't keep a good man down, as the saying goes, that goes threefold for three good men. Using their songwriting talents, they began contributing their work to the various legendary musicians like Barbra Streisand, writing great song after great song. They continue to be revered as great musicians until Morris's death, and then even afterwards, until Robin's death. Their parents are also gone. Even their mother, despite her living until the age of 95, and their baby brothers, Andy's talked about his time as a teen idol in the late 70s, and how his own demons did him in before, just as he became old enough they could have joined his much older brothers in the BeeGee's. I don't know why their sister Leslie isn't included. She was older than them. She briefly filled in for Robin when he quit the group in the early 70s. But I do know Leslie is a private citizen, so she just didn't want to be featured in the documentary. Didn't want any footage of her singing with Morris and Barry featured, even though others would have loved to see that. But regardless of her still being around, it's still very heart-wrenching when Barry talks about being refers himself as the last survivor of his immediate family. Of course, he's talking about his original immediate family. But Barry and his brothers all became, his brothers and BeeGee's they all became fathers, but I haven't heard anything about any of their kids trying to follow in their footsteps. So when Barry's gone, it will be the end of Gibb music, I guess. So I hope Barry's around once the pandemic ends. Barry has both the time left and the willingness to do at least one more tour. I would love to see him, but we can see why I love the movie so much. But for anyone who loves music and genre, just loves good documentaries, it's a fantastic story told with so much research, so much archival material, and of course, a lot of moments with Barry speaking to us, and then a lot of old footage of Robin and Morris later in their lives, talking also, enough so that you almost forget that they're not around anymore. It's like they're participating in the documentary too, and that all of the people who knew them giving great insight, but a lot of other people, the vast collection of video clips and the news articles, pictures, fantastic documentary. Check it out. I know I already said a lot, but if you want to see my written thoughts, go to autisticartcritic.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and hit the subscribe button below. Thank you.